20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Chapter 15, Trapped Beneath the Ice. We now had to make plans for leaving. Since March 21st was the beginning of the long polar night, it would be another 6 months before the sun shone here again. The Nautilus's air tanks were filled, and it slowly sank beneath the surface. We began heading north again. At 3 o'clock the next morning, a violent blow threw me out of bed. The ship was leaning on its side, but I managed to crawl into the lounge. Ned and Conseil were there. We sat stunned for several minutes until Captain Nemo came rushing in. "Have we had an accident?" I asked. "Yes, monsieur, an accident of nature. It seems that an enormous iceberg has turned over. As its base rose up, it trapped us between the base and the underside of the ice on the surface. We are in a kind of ice tunnel, Professor, but the Nautilus can still get out by moving forward or backward." Just then, the propeller started up and we were underway, traveling forward at high speed. But 2 hours later, the Nautilus collided with something ahead. It was a wall of ice. There was not enough room in the tunnel to turn around, so the engines were reversed and we began moving backward. For 3 hours, the Nautilus sped south through the ice tunnel. But at 8 a.m., a second collision took place. Captain Nemo entered the lounge in his diving suit and explained, "Our route to the south is now blocked too. The iceberg has closed off every opening. But we shall not die without trying everything possible first. We still have a 3-day supply of air, and we shall breathe it as we try cutting ourselves out through the ice walls." Ned then spoke up. "Captain Nemo, I'm as good with a pickaxe as I am with a harpoon." "Thank you, Mr. Land," said the captain. "We shall need everyone's help. My men and I have just been checking the thickness of the ice outside. Above us it is 1,300 feet thick, on the sides 50 feet thick, and below us 30 feet thick. Therefore, we shall start digging a trench on the floor of the ice off to the side of the ship." Ned left with the captain to join the first group at work. After 2 hours, Conseil and I joined the second group. We alternated shifts for the next 12 hours, but we were able to remove only 3 feet of ice. If work continued at this rate, we would need 5 nights and 4 days to cut through the ice, but we only had 2 days of air left in the reservoirs. And then, even if we managed to dig ourselves free, who knew how long it would be until we could surface to get fresh air? By the next day, the ice overhead on the sides of the tunnel had frozen thicker. How long would it be before the walls and ceiling came together and crushed us? The air on board was becoming more and more difficult to breathe. Whatever was in the tanks had to be saved for the men working out on the ice. But even that supply would be empty the day after tomorrow. Hour after hour, we chopped away at the ice. 13 feet remained, then 10, then 6, but the air reservoirs were now almost empty. The 2 days were up. The men on the ship were overcome with a terrible weariness from the lack of fresh air. Some were unconscious, and a few were close to death. Still, 3 feet of ice remained. The work was going too slowly for us to survive. Then, Captain Nemo decided to try crushing the last 3 feet of ice with the ship itself. Even though he was breathing as little air as we were, he still managed to think, plan, and act. He raised the Nautilus off the ice where it had been resting and moved it over above the trench. Water was pumped into the reservoirs to increase the ship's weight. Slowly, the Nautilus began to sink. We waited and listened and prayed. I was dizzy from the lack of air, but I soon heard the ice tremble and crack beneath us. "We're going through," Conseil murmured in my ear. I was too weak to answer, but I squeezed his hand to let him know I heard. As soon as we were free in the water, the ship started traveling north at a terrifying speed. But how long would it take to reach the other side of the great ice barrier, where we could surface? Another day? I would be dead before then. My face was purple, my lips were blue, and my mind was no longer able to think. I couldn't hear or see anything. As the hours passed, I felt death approaching. "Hold on, monsieur," whispered Conseil. "We are below an ice field now, and the captain is going to try to break through." I felt the ship slant upward and heard the roar of its powerful engines. On the first try, the ice cracked a little. We went back down and struck again at full speed. An opening. Finally, with one last effort, we rushed up and broke through the surface. The hatch sprang open, and pure air came flooding into the Nautilus. End of chapter 15.